Welcome to the Crime Report, where we delve into the darkest corners of real-life mysteries. From unsolved murders to shocking criminal conspiracies, we explore the stories that shook the world. Each episode, we take you step by step through the investigation, uncovering the truth behind the headlines and the secrets that still remain hidden. If you're a fan of crime stories, stay tuned and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Get ready, because we're about to uncover a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat.
The Heineken Kidnapping Part 1, Silence in Amsterdam, November 9, 1983. A cold, gray Wednesday in Amsterdam. At exactly 9 a.m., Freddy Heineken, CEO of the world-famous beer empire, stepped out of his limousine and into the courtyard of his office on the Tvete Wetteringplatz. He greeted his driver, Doderer, exchanged a few words, and vanished. Just like that. In broad daylight. In the heart of the city. Without a single shot, scream, or trace. The silence was deafening. The next morning, a single phone rang at the Heineken Company headquarters. A calm voice. Cold. Calculated. Dutch. We have Freddy Heineken and his driver. If you want to see them alive again, prepare 35 million guilders. No police. No games. Or he dies? It was a moment that would paralyze the Netherlands. This wasn't just a rich man. This was Freddy Heineken, a titan of industry, a cultural icon, a man whose name was on every bottle across the world. The media exploded. Behind the scenes, 5 men were already deep into their plan. Led by 2 childhood friends from Amsterdam, Cor van Hout and Willem Holleder, this wasn't some spontaneous act. This was a military-grade operation, 2 years in the making. They'd studied Heineken's routine. They knew every exit, every angle, every second of his daily schedule. They built custom soundproof cells inside a warehouse on the Frans Halstraat. Steel reinforced. Chained from the floor. No light. No contact with the outside world. Freddy and Ab were held like prisoners in a tomb. Inside his cell, Freddy Heineken began a mental battle. No clocks. No windows. Just the metallic scrape of chains. And the sound of his own breathing. He kept count of the days by scratching tallies into the wall with a broken zipper. Outside, police were in chaos. The Dutch Prime Minister was briefed hourly. Interpol was notified. Every ferry, airport, and border was on alert. But the kidnappers had disappeared into thin air. No fingerprints. No ransom drop. Just a trail of silence. As tension rose, so did the fear. What if Heineken had already been killed? What if the kidnappers never planned to return him? It was the perfect crime. But they had made one mistake. They wanted the money. And that meant they had to come out of hiding. Part 2, the ransom game. The demand was clear, 35 million Dutch guilders. Delivered in used banknotes, unmarked and untraceable. Any police involvement. And Freddy Heineken would die. The world was stunned. One of the most powerful men in Europe had vanished, and it had happened in the heart of Amsterdam, without a single witness. The Dutch government was under enormous pressure. The media was in a frenzy. Every hour without word from Heineken made the tension worse. Inside the dark, soundproof chamber, Freddy Heineken was already playing a mental game of survival. He knew his name carried power. But down here, in this stinking steel coffin, power meant nothing. He scratched tallies into the wall with a broken zipper from his coat. Day 1. Day 2. Day 3. And through the walls, he heard the occasional cough, the rustle of chains. It was the only proof he wasn't alone. Then came the voice. Low. Controlled. Calculated. Cor van Hout. You'll be free, Freddy. If your company plays by the rules. If they pay. And if not? Freddy asked. Silence. Then we'll let the sea decide. Behind the scenes, Dutch investigators were walking a razor's edge. Chief Inspector Piet Mulder was in charge of negotiations. He was calm, methodical, but this case was unlike anything the Netherlands had ever seen. Through coded phone calls and carefully planted messages, they established contact with the kidnappers. The exchange was agreed. The money would be delivered in 2 vans. Drivers would follow a complex route of instructions. At no point would the money handlers see the kidnappers. And no attempt to track or follow the trail would be tolerated. It was a ransom maze, designed to confuse, delay, and vanish into the shadows. Day 5. The vans set off. The money was loaded. The air was thick with tension. Every corner they turned, the drivers expected an ambush. Then came the calls. Payphones. Directions to another location. Then another. A car switch. A parked motorcycle. An alley behind a bakery. But the closer they got to the drop point, the more nervous the police became. Because somewhere along the line, the kidnappers vanished. No sign of where the money had gone. No clue as to Freddy or Ab's location. Just a final call. You'll find them. Soon. Don't be stupid. Day 6. Detectives were growing desperate. The fear was real, that the money was gone, and Freddy Heineken was never coming back. But then, a break. A tip from an informant. A van spotted outside an abandoned warehouse. The location, Amsterdam Noord. Police stormed the site. Inside, 2 makeshift cells, lined with soundproof material. The air reeked of sweat and metal. And there they were. Freddy Heineken and Doderer, alive. Barely. Chained, exhausted, and blinking in disbelief as light hit their faces for the first time in nearly a week. Freddy didn't speak much at first. Just whispered. They fed us bread, water, and silence. As he was led into the ambulance, one detective heard him mutter. They may have my money, but they'll never have peace. The manhunt now shifted into its final and most critical phase. Find the kidnappers. Find the money. And stop them before they disappear forever. But Cor van Hout and Willem Holleder were already on the run. Part 3, The Hunt Begins. Amsterdam exhaled. Freddy Heineken had been found alive. But the story was far from over. 35 million guilders. 5 men. One escape plan that would test the limits of law enforcement across Europe. Dutch authorities had their names. Their faces. But no clue where they had gone. Cor van Hout, Willem Holleder, and their 3 accomplices, Jan Bollaert, Frans Meyer, and Martin Eerkamps, had vanished like smoke. And now, the clock was ticking. Because the longer they stayed hidden, the more likely the ransom would disappear forever. A lead came from France. A stolen Peugeot, abandoned in Paris, matched the description of a vehicle used during the ransom delivery. Inside, police found fingerprints belonging to Willem Holleder. Days later, another kidnapper was spotted in Brussels, then fled south, slipping through Luxembourg and into Spain. But the real trail led to the glittering coastline of the French Riviera. In Nice, amid yachts and seaside mansions, police learned the kidnappers were living like kings. Fake passports, suitcases filled with cash, and underworld connections that reached deep into European crime networks. It was here that Interpol struck. In a coordinated raid, both Cor van Hout and Willem Holleder were arrested, without a single shot fired. But then came a new twist. France refused to extradite them immediately. The kidnappers fought back, with expensive lawyers, legal loopholes, and charisma. They dragged out the proceedings for months. And all the while, the ransom money was vanishing. Back in the Netherlands, the search for the 35 million intensified. Only a fraction was recovered. Some bills surfaced years later, in drug busts, shady real estate deals, and offshore accounts. But the vast majority? Gone. One of the kidnappers, Franz Meyer, disappeared completely. He wouldn't resurface until 2 decades later, living under an alias in Paraguay, where he'd built an entirely new life. Eventually, all 5 men were sentenced for their crimes. Some served their time and disappeared from public view. Some returned to a life of organized crime. And one would become infamous. Willem Hollader, the man who once helped kidnap a beer tycoon, would go on to become one of the most feared criminal figures in Dutch history. Linked to blackmail, assassinations, and a reign of terror that spanned decades. The Heineken kidnapping wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something darker. Freddy Heineken, though physically recovered, rarely spoke about the ordeal. In one of his few interviews, he said simply, "They didn't just take my money. They took my silence, my sense of safety. And that never leaves you." He passed away in 2002. But his name lives on, not just on the labels of beer bottles, but in the memory of a country that lost its innocence. In a warehouse, behind steel doors, under 5 chilling words. They've kidnapped Freddy Heineken.
If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more thrilling mysteries like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your likes and shares help us grow and bring even more gripping tales to life. Thanks for listening.